What is going on, you guys, and welcome to the next 3 chapters of Alan and Wonderland. As I mentioned at the tail end of our last video, I really believe that the lifeblood of this thing is going to be growth. So if you are enjoying this content that I'm putting out, and you happen to know somebody or a group of people that would enjoy it as much as you, please don't be afraid to share it with them. Obviously, my intention is to not only grow overall as a channel with more subscribers and things of that nature, but I really want to get as many eyes as humanly possible on my book stuff in particular, and really focus on growing my audience around that specifically, because this is kind of what the future is going to look like. So I really want people to be able to find me here, to be able to enjoy the content that I'm putting out, and just be a part of everything going forward. So with that being said, let us continue with our read-through. Chapter 7, A Mad Meeting. When I opened my eyes, I was my normal height. I was myself again. After I gathered myself, I saw that in front of me was a fork in the trail. In the middle of the fork was a sign hanging on a tree. The sign read, "March Hare, left, Mad Hatter, right." Confused on which way to go, I decided to turn to the journals to see which way Alice chose to go. I searched and searched, and found no answer to this. What I did find was that the Hatter and the Hare favored tea and sang something called the Unbirthday Song. Just as I was getting lost in Alice's words, I was interrupted by a voice. "Lost again, Alan?" In the tree above the sign, Chesh sat with a wide smile on his face. I replied, "I'm just not sure which way to go." Chesh pointed his paw in the direction of the sign. "This tells you which way to go. If you walk one way, you'll come out the other." I looked ahead to see what he was referring to, and I saw that both trails led to the same place. They each ended at a gate in front of a house that was surrounded by a hedge. I looked at the sign again and recognized the Mad Hatter was the name my father put at the bottom of the note he left me. With my memory jogged, I quickly headed down the Hatter's trail. Without a word, Chesh jumped down from his perch and followed close behind. Before long, we reached the gate. I carefully opened it, and the two of us crept in and navigated the hedge maze. When Chesh and I completed the maze, I stood and marveled at what I was looking at. Ahead of us was a long dining table with lots of chairs, and just as many teacups, pots, and saucers. Of all the chairs seated at the table, only 2 of them were filled. At the head of the table sat an odd-looking character wearing a black top hat and matching overcoat. In the chair next to him sat a brown hare with fidgeting eyes as well as ears. Chesh led me to the table, and the seated figures took notice. "Ah, Cheshire, care for some tea?" the hatted man asked. "No, Hatter, this isn't a casual visit. I've brought someone for you to meet," Chesh replied. "A guest!" both the Hatter and the Hare exclaimed happily. Hatter continued, "Surely he would like some tea." He motioned to the chair next to the Hare. I sat in the chair and looked at the cup of tea in front of me, and Chesh introduced me. "This is Alan." The Hare jumped in with a hyper tone. "I'm the March Hare. Hatter came after. You may call me Hatter. I mumbled under my breath, Mad Hatter. Hatter caught this and chuckled as he spoke. Mad? I'm not mad. It's the world that is. He then began to ramble uncontrollably in a furious manner. Chesh was quick to intervene. Drink some tea, Hatter. You're getting a little too hot for your hat. Hatter choked down his emotion and replied with a hushed voice, Yes, tea. He took a small sip. As the hare nervously drank from his cup, he perked up when he saw the journals sticking out of my bag and smiled. Hatter, he brought stories. Instantly, Hatter seemed oblivious to his former mood. How delightful. Do share one. I refused. These aren't just any stories. The hare began to chuckle. A story is a story, nevertheless. Chesh added, Hatter, I think this is a story you should read yourself. He then took the journal out of my bag and carried it to Hatter. With the book in front of them on the table, both the hare and the Hatter looked at it with great curiosity. When they glanced at the cover, a look of great shock crossed Hatter's face. The hare became fearful, as both he and his chair tumbled backward. Hatter whispered, Alice, I'm not a dream. Excuse me. Ignoring what I had heard, I announced, I am the kin of Alice. Chesh cut me off. The prophecy, Hatter, it is upon us. Hatter vacantly looked up from the book, and the hare looked up from under the table. Hatter said, This cannot be. Chesh replied sympathetically, I wish it wasn't, Hatter, but the Red Queen is coming back, and Alan will lead us against her. Chesh then looked at me with a grin. Hatter quickly but gracefully got up from his chair and stepped toward me. He took my teacup, dumped it, and poured tea into it again. Drink this. Our Savior deserves a toast, he said. The hare, who had returned to the table, motioned a toasting gesture to me. Not wanting to be rude, I let our cups clink together and we both drank. Seconds later, the world grew dark. I was asleep. Chapter 8. Quest into Sleep. Although I was asleep, my induced coma was anything but peaceful. Visions choked my slumber, turning my dream into a nightmare. Flashbacks showed me a battle, through whose eyes I couldn't tell at first. I heard the voices that taunted me, switching between Alice's and my father's. They both told me that as her kin, to follow Alice's steps is my destiny. The vision seemed to skip parts of the battle, and the next clear thing I saw was the Jabberwocky lying dead at my feet. After a time, the great monster began to morph into a human. It took me a moment to realize that this human that lay limp, gasping for life, was the Red Queen. Again, I was fast-forwarded. I was brought to the top of a hill. There, I saw Alice, standing, overlooking the land. She wore a full suit of armor and held a blade above her head in victory. This picture, too, began to change as Alice's body became mine, and soon it was me who wore the armor, held the blade, and stood atop the hill. This was the last image I saw before the dream went black and began to fade away. The last thing I heard as it faded was my father's voice speaking the last words he wrote in his letter, Find Alice's Wonderland. Chapter 9, Council of Wonder. When I woke, I saw that I was in Hatter's house. lying in a bed. The door to the house was left slightly open. Beyond it I heard a handful of voices, all familiar, talking at once. As I walked closer to the door, the cluster of voices became louder. I put my hand on the door, pushed on it, and the door flew open, letting the world in. I stepped outside, and in front of me sat a table full of creatures that I had previously met. Hatter sat at the head of the table, March Hare next to him on the right. On his left sat the twins, Dum and Dee. I came up behind Hatter, and the hare was the first to notice me. "Why, Alan, come sit, come sit." He pointed to a seat at the foot of the table, a number of seats down from him. I sat in my seat and was greeted by the twins and Hatter. Hatter said with a smile on his face, "We've been waiting for you, my friend." With surprise I asked, "Me? Why?" The hare chimed in, "Because you're the life of the party." The twins shouted in unison, "Hear, hear." Hatter quieted the others and continued, "We have come to the conclusion that you are indeed the one we think you are." I had to ask, "Which means what?" Dum said, "It means it's time to see the White Queen." Dee finished, "Time to prepare for war." Shocked, I yelled, "War?" Hatter was quick to calm me. "The Red Queen is soon to return. She will bring war with her, a war in which you will lead us." Dee cut in. We all will fight under the Red Queen's banner, lad." Confused, I questioned, "We? I'm not fighting alone." The hare chuckled, "Alone? No, no, no. We Wonderlanders stick together." Hatter agreed, but spoke sternly. "But we cannot help you slay the Red Queen." Dee finished, "Aye, that you must do on your own." I replied doubtfully, "But I have no skills in combat. How am I supposed to fight? That, boyo, is why we are leaving." Hatter quickly jumped up from his seat. "It's settled then. We shall accompany you to see the White Queen." The hare squealed happily. "Away we go." He and the twins rose from their chairs. And that is where we're going to end this episode. I know it's really short, a short 3 chapters there, but I kind of like to keep things uniform. I think 3 chapters is a really nice pace. So a little bit shorter here, but that's going to wrap this one up, guys. And we'll see you guys in the next one.